Good afternoon, everyone. And in some cases, I know for our Australian friends, very early morning to you. We are ready to roll today. Today, I'm going to share some of my favorite ways of creating black and white images. And I'm also going to touch in the last couple of projects a little bit on some of the new features of the new NIC 8 collection. Some of the biggest updates are to silver Efex, so kind of was appropriate for this. Of course, I already had all my projects written, so I had to modify a couple to add those in. But anyway, we're just going to jump right in and get a rolling. So our first image, this is a cell phone shot. I've taken this location many times. It's one of the stops on our workshops. And I'm going to do everything here in Photoshop. I'm going to start with the camera raw filter, but of course you can also do the same things in Lightroom. And so I'm going to go to filter, camera raw filter. I'm only going to do this on the first couple just to kind of see how I tweak things, and then we'll jump into the black and white part of it. So first, under light, we're going to add some contrast because we always need that in most images, digital images anyway, and especially when you're dealing with black and white. I'm going to bring the highlights down some and bring the shadows up. And we're going to bring the whites down a little bit and the blacks up. And then we're going to go into Efex. And I always add a little bit of texture and clarity to sharpen up my images. So we're going to go over to about there and about there for clarity, and then a little bit of detail as well. So we're going to do sharpening just a little bit of noise reduction. And a little bit of color noise reduction. And we'll say OK. And I did this on a separate layer so we can look at, there's the before, it's kind of flat, not a lot of detail in there. And that really crisped it up, really brought out the detail in the bushes and in this nice old wood. OK, so the one thing I wanted to fix in here is this little white spot. I think it's a building in the background, so I'm just going to grab my healing brush and do a little swipe over here. Get rid of that. And now we're going to launch our NIC silver Efex. So like I said, for most of these I'm going to work with 7 because that's what most people still have. But I do want to show you a little bit about the new ones. And I'll be doing probably the next webinar in July. I'll do the NIC collection. Yep, we're going to do that later. I already have it installed, but I got it through the through my beta version. What was I going to say? Oh, I usually do a webinar every year when the new NIC collection comes out, and so we'll do that with the next one in July, and I can show you all the new goodies that are in here. So I'm going to start with the landscape category, and I used, uncheck my favorites here, I'm going to use number 48, which is a deep landscape. And I'm going to show you a couple others I considered. So this one, I liked what I did to the clouds, and it really brought out lots of detail in here. The other one was this dark sky one, which is a little bit lighter in here, not as much punch on the wood. And the other one was this contrasty one. And that one I thought was just a little too bright. So I'm going to go back to deep landscape, and that just, for me, it really gave it the kind of look that I was going for and emphasized all the detail in this image. And then I decided to add a border on this one. So we'll come over here down to the bottom. They're off right now. I'm going to go in here, and I used number 7. And then I'm going to reduce that size of it. So we're going to go Yeah, where am I going? Down here. Size minus 93, because I don't want it to take up so much of my image. And then the spread is the width of the black area there. So I'm going to add just a little bit to that, just to really make it a nice distinct border. And I like this one because it's kind of a rough edge, kind of fits that kind of an image. And there you have it. So the thing that I always look for when I'm doing black and white is you really do want a good contrast with your blacks and your whites. And that's important. I mean, there are some exceptions, and you'll see one that I'm going to do in a couple images that's, it's a foggy morning, so it doesn't have quite as much contrast, but that's also creating a mood for that particular image. But generally, you're going to want to, really get those nice whites and blacks. So then we can hit apply. I could bring it in as a smart object if I wanted to, and close that down so you can see our final image. And don't forget, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box. I have it open. Please make sure you type your questions to everyone. Hit the everyone from the drop down, because it defaults to hosts and panelists so that everybody can see the questions. All right, so I'm going to close that one. So next up, this is another, this was taken with my camera, but this was also from one of our workshops. So again, I'm going to do Control J, duplicate my layer, and go to Camera Raw Filter. And we're going to go back up to light. We're going to add some contrast. Bring the highlights down. Bring the shadows up a little. Bring the whites down. And the blacks up. These were JPEG because I usually do that for the classes. I do shoot in RAW, both on my phone and on my camera. I usually convert them to JPEGs for demos just because they open faster, and they're easier for me to send, along with the notes. If you purchase the notes, you get the images, and RAW files just take too much space. So that's why I convert them to JPEG, but it originally was a RAW. So if I did it in RAW, it would automatically open the Camera Raw filter, if I were opening the RAW file. Let's see. Cindy said you establish your white and black point different than me. I go up on my white point till I see a white point and go down on the black. I was trying to just bring down the highlights that I thought were a little too bright, is what I was doing with the highlights and the whites, and the same thing with the blacks. It depends on the image. Sometimes I will, emphasize the blacks more, but I didn't want it to get too muddied in. So that's why I brought that one up just a little bit. And Helen said, can I use just a border from one of these presets on an image in Photoshop or Lightroom? Yes. You can use the Nick borders just by opening that. I'll show you when we get in there how you'll find that. So let's go to our effects, add some texture and some clarity and some detail. So we're going to sharpen this to about 50. A little bit of noise reduction. This was with my camera, so it's typically not as noisy as a cell phone shot would be. Come on. Okay, and you'll see by the histogram, I'm actually still a little bit blocked up on the blacks here because it's running up the side, but I don't have any blown out highlights. So you can always keep an eye on your histogram when you're adjusting those as well. But I think the blacks are fine. It's probably maybe that very dark area in the shadows, which is okay. So we'll say okay there. So for this one, I'm going to show you, instead of using Nick color effect or silver effects, we're going to do it with a black and white adjustment layer. And I'm going to show you the difference. I mean, of course, with the Nick, you have all the presets to work with. Where here, you're kind of controlling the tones of the colors individually. So these are based on your colors in your original image. So this was the default that it read from that image. And then you can adjust them from there. So I'm going to go to about 16. So I'm bringing down the brightness of the reds a little bit, and the yellows. Again, I'm trying to create some contrast and mood in this image. So greens I'm going to bring down because we've got our grass. Not that much. I want it to be about there. And cyan, we're going to leave. Blue, I brought that way down. And magenta to about there. So I have, I've darkened down some of the areas that I don't necessarily need as much detail in. I wanted to keep the wheel, the focus on this image. So I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer and bring down the brightness just a teeny bit. And then I want to, I've brought down the brightness, but I want the wheel to be still brighter. So I'm going to use my layer mask. I'm going to grab a soft round brush, get to a round brush, make it soft. And I'm going to do it at about 1700 pixels because it's really ginormous right now. I don't know why it's that big. And 100% opacity. And I'm just going to kind of brush over the wheel itself, maybe a little bit over that way. So it's kind of like an oval shape. So I brought the brightness back to 0 basically, where with this adjustment, I've lowered the brightness on the rest of the image. So you can see I could bring it down even more if I wanted to really darken down the background and just keep the wheel the focus of this. And then I'm going to lower the opacity of my brush to around 50% and make my brush smaller. And I want to bring back just a little bit of the, whoops, not there, you got to be on the mask, and just mask a little bit in there. So I'm at 50%. So I'm just bringing some of that back. So I just came back a little bit more in there. And then, because you all know me and know I love textures, I'm going to add a texture to this too. And that's going to, the one I chose is going to help me bring down the background edges even more. I'm going to use it kind of like a vignette because the center is not going to really change it much. So this one is already to size. And we're going to change this to multiply, which is our darkening blending mode. And I left it at that. You could also, I'm going to copy this mask to here so I really open up that center. So if you hold down your Alt or Option key, first click on that mask, hold the Alt key, in my case I'm on a PC, and drag it to that layer. It will duplicate it. So now we don't have any texture on that center part. It's just giving us that, the darker edges and really emphasizing the subject. I thought that was a pretty cool take on that particular image. I've done it in color with textures before, and I think that, it does what I want it to do with this image, makes the subject stand out. Let's see if I have any other questions. Yep, I was in Adobe Camera Raw when you joined, and I think we're good there. Alrighty, so let me close that one. So next up, we're going to do this one. This is the nice foggy one. Again, this one was from a workshop too. I know some of you probably know where this is, and the hotel in Bulls Gap. Early morning, foggy morning. So this one I'm going to go ahead and launch my silver Efex. Okay. So it picks a a basic preset when you come in here. It may not be the one you want, but if you wanted to not do anything except a border, you could turn off like the film grain, the film type, pretty much everything except those finishing things, local adjustments, clear view, color filters, and only have the borders open, and then you could there's toning here, so that's why that's there. So you could turn, let's see, can we turn that part off? Yep, we can turn that off and just use the image borders, and you can choose a border from there. You can also find borders in color effects. It's one of the categories, which might be easier, then you don't have to turn all this other stuff off. But there are borders, image borders in color effects, and I believe they're pretty much the same as, oops, not there, as these. Yeah, they are. So that would be an even easier place to do that. Okay, so here I'm going to go into the, I'm going to go to my favorites. Nope. Let's go to all in favorites. Sometimes some that I happen to like a lot. And let's see if I have that one in here. I have street category, but I don't see a street category. So let's go to all. Let's uncheck that. Street down here. And this one that's called Hint of Blue. So it's a black and white. It's just got a teeny bit of toning into it, and I thought it worked really nice with this particular image. So then we're going to come over to our adjustments. I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to start under the global adjustments, and the brightness I'm going to bring down just a little bit because of that bright sky or fog. The highlights I brought all the way down. The midtones I'm going to bring up a little bit. And again, it's going to vary depending on your image and the tones in your individual image and in your personal taste. This is how I happen to like this, but you might like something very different. I'm going to bring the contrast. I brought the contrast down, which is very unusual. Usually I'm adding contrast, but just because of the fog, I thought it just gave that a better look. And then here I'm going to amplify the blacks a little bit. And soft contrast I also brought down a little. Then we're going to go to structure. I didn't want to do anything in the highlights because I didn't want to add structure up there, but to the midtones and the shadows and the fine structure. So I just wanted to add a little more structure to the rocks and the actual train tracks. So now we're going to use the control points that we have in our Nick products. And I'm going to add a control point up over the sky here. And we're going to add it about in the middle of the bright part. Whoops, I picked the wrong one. I don't want a control line. Let's get rid of that. I want, yes, I wanted a control point. Sorry, picked the wrong one. We have so many options now. I love it. And I really want to make this an oval. So the way we can do that is move this so you get the hand tool over one of the 4 points there, and you can stretch it. And then if you put the cursor outside, you get that curved arrow. We can angle it, and I'm going to move it. So I want to cover that brightest part of the sky. And again, I'm going to bring down that brightness just a little bit. And the structure, because I really wanted to keep that foggy look. And the highlights. Brightness constrictor and the highlights. And is this preset one that comes with Yes. No, it's not one that I made. This is, I don't have the street. Oh, maybe I just didn't go down far enough. Oh yeah, there's the street category. I always forget there's a scroll thing there. You could, they have all these different street ones. They have a vintage and blue and high contrast. So yeah, that's one that comes with the program. And then I decided to burn these edges a little bit. So we're going to come down to the bottom. And there's a burn edges, which is currently off. And I'm going to click that drop down, and I did all edges number 1, which is the most subtle. If you go to number 2, or they have soft ones, and they just can get very dark. So I just wanted to do a little bit to do a little bit like of a vignette, just touch, just a touch of toning down. And if you decide you want to change this toning, there is a toning filter. Right now it's on number 10 to create this, but you could change that. You can make it more blue, or you could change it to a sepia. So you can also choose one of the other colors in here. Some are even more subtle, but I kind of liked that little bit of blue tone to this one. And then we'll just apply. So I kind of like that. It kept the effect of the fog, really toned it down so it wasn't overly bright, where this was like really, really bright up here. I thought that just made it more moody for me. Is that thunder I'm hearing? Thunder, yeah. We have a storm getting ready to roll through. We actually have a tornado watch until 8 o'clock from pretty much all of Tennessee. Hopefully we don't get anything here. We usually, just get some storms, but you never know. So fingers crossed. Anyway, that is our finished one for that one. So let's close that. So if I should happen to go offline, hopefully I can get right back on again if we get a little power blip or anything. What's up, Ben? Yeah, they're both in. Just making sure the cats were in. All right, so we've got this bucket of tulips. I shot this a few years ago in my kitchen. This is just an old lace curtain I threw over the back. And we are going to go ahead right into our silver effects. And this one I used under the Modern collection. It's 043. It's called More Silver. And I just liked that one. I liked that it really brought out some of the detail in the lace, because it was kind of hard to see it, just the way that it was. And then we're going to adjust a few things over here. So let's go up into here, and I'm going to amplify the whites a little bit more and brighten that up. And then structure in the shadows. I want to add some more in there. And that was pretty much all I did to that one. So I just made it a little more contrasty. I think maybe bring that white down just a hair. I don't want to lose the detail in it either. And then what I decided to do, even though we're doing black and white, this is an option you always have with black and whites, is I just lower the opacity of this nick layer just to let a little hint of color through. Kind of make it a little pastel, so it's kind of got that black and white feel. It's like almost like a hand-colored black and white, and I thought that was really pretty, and brought in the color, in the tulips and the leaves, because the container was already gray, so that was pretty much black and white to begin with, so lowering the opacity didn't really change that. And it just really, was a nice effect. And then I'm going to add a texture to this one, and it's going to just add a little bit of a border. Again, I'm choosing textures that are kind of subtle for these, and they were black and white, but you can always change any texture to black and white, remember, by adding a black and white adjustment layer and clipping it to that particular layer. So we're going to do multiply and then bring this down a little bit to about there. And I thought that was different and pretty, and it gave it a nice border to that. Jean said she's new to Nick. What does structure mean? Structure is kind of like sharpening. It's adding more detail. I use structure using texture. The texture slider, structure, and detail will all help crisp up your image in different ways, and you can utilize them to get the look that you're going for. But I use structure a lot when I'm using this kind of stuff, especially in the Nick stuff. How do you get your presets to appear in one column instead of two? This is the panel this is the way it installs. I've never changed it. Maybe make it wider. Let's go to, I don't know if you can change the size of it. No, maybe not. I'm not sure. But when you see Nick 8, you're going to see we don't have this panel anymore. We've got something even better. So I don't know why yours would be in 2. Sorry, I don't have that answer. So if you're clipping an image, say if we wanted to add if this wasn't already black and white, I wanted to add a black and white adjustment layer. When you add the layer, it has now made everything black and white. If you only want to make the texture black and white, hold your Alt Option key and move your cursor between the layers till you get that little square with the downward pointing arrow and click. And now this layer, you got that little arrow here. This layer is clipped to that layer, so the black and white is only affecting that layer and not everything else. You can see we still have our the effect of this color layer here. Okay. Alrighty. So let's go on. So what's that, dear? Did I miss one? Oh, do you usually do all of your editing in Nick Silver Efex when you want a black and white versus editing first in ACR? I always edit my photo before I do any kind of creative work. So that's why I've been using ACR, or like I said, you could use Lightroom or however you like to do your basic editing. So I always want my image to be as good as it can be before I do either the Nick stuff or textures or any of the other creative stuff. I always want my image looking as good as I can get it. So yes, I do edit first before I do any of that. Okay. So next up is we'll get to 8 and 7 in a minute. I just did that. Dave's trying to fill me in on questions, so we'll get to the Nick 8 in a minute in the comparison. All right, so this is one from Mount Moriah Cemetery in Philadelphia. And this one I have done a sky replacement and editing, so I'm going to show you. That's my original. Let's close that for a second. Okay, that was my original edited image, and then it was a very gray sky day. You can see there are a few clouds there, but I did do a sky replacement with one of my own skies. And so now we're going to do our silver effects. And I always say when you're using categories of things, don't think because this is like a scenic image, you have to use like landscape or something. I actually found a preset under portraits that I liked for this. So sometimes I'll look through the all category to see everything that's in here. And sometimes I'll narrow it down and look at the different categories. But I just liked this dark glow one. And the way that really added a lot of moodiness to the sky, gave me kind of darkened down the backgrounds a little bit, and then, emphasized my subject because that was the brightest area anyway. And the other one that I kind of liked, I can do a comparison. Let's go to all and go to my favorites. This full spectrum one was the other one I was potentially looking at, but it's a little bit flatter looking. There's not as much contrast between the mausoleum and the shrubbery. So I thought that this dark glow one was really, just really gave it the drama that I was looking for. And for this one, that was all I really did to this one. I didn't adjust anything. I think it looks sharp enough, but if you wanted to come over and, like I said, add a little bit more structure, we could try that. Just crisp it. I wouldn't add a whole lot in this case because I did, pre-edit, the color photo. And let's see, if we brightened up the highlights, what would it do? And I'm just trying this. Yeah, if we wanted to brighten up that even a little bit more, you could pump a little highlights, brighten up just the highlights, which would be this area. And I think that looks pretty good. So it's a simple one. Sometimes some are easier to get a good result with. But again, look through these presets because it's a great way to start. And then you can always fine tune them to fit your image. Okay. When you do the edit in ACR or Lightroom prior to conversion, is there a difference between your edit decisions when leaving it in color as opposed to black and white? That's a good question. Sometimes. Like I said, I always want the image to look as good as it can, but if I know I'm going to be doing a black and white, I may add, a little more contrast, get those highlights slightly brighter. But then again, you can also change them when you come into, the silver effects. So if I didn't get it, quite as contrasty, say when I was doing the basic edit, when I get into silver effects, I can modify that like we just did with this one and add a little more brightness to those, the bright areas here. All right. What's up, babe? Yeah, it's rumbling pretty good out there right now, so hopefully we don't lose power. All right. So with this one, we're going to touch on the new NIC 8. So I'm closing this panel because we don't need that anymore. So first I'm going to start with, I started with a black and white adjustment layer. So this one I kind of did both a black and white adjustment layer and then silver effects. Come on. And I adjusted these a little bit. So with this one, I really wanted to make the flower stand out and tone down that background. So I just moved this just slightly for the yellows. Greens we're going to bring down. And reds I added, well, I brought it to 4, so I actually lowered it from where it was. Okay, so that's that. So now to launch NIC, you're no longer going to have this panel. What we have is this panel. This is their new little logo. And some of them I ended up getting over here, and I don't remember if I did that intentionally or not. I'm still, like I said, I'm still messing around with this. I just got it just before I left for my last 2 workshops, so I've been gone for over a week and haven't really had much time to play with it. But if you open up the, put it down here so that it will launches in a different way. So now you have, if you hover over these, it'll tell you, let's cancel that for a second. I don't want to do that yet. These are all your different modules. So we have color effects, silver effects, analog, just like before for Vesa, and now they all have a new logo with the letter that kind of indicates what they are. So now we're going to tell it to open, and like before with this panel, we had, if you went into settings, you could apply the filter to basically an image composite, all of the layers that you have, or you could apply it only to the active layer. Okay, so with this one, it's kind of the same thing. You can apply it to just the active layer or a combination of all visible layers, which is what I want to do. And you can apply favorites and last edit if you wanted to. And then the new thing is we have masking in Nik. And the masks can go, what you create in Nik can go back to Photoshop, and a Photoshop mask can come into Nik, which is very cool. I'm still getting used to it. It takes a little bit to get used to it and learn it, but I've watched some videos on it. When they did our affiliate release, they had some demos that were just amazing. So because this layer has a mask, when I say to open it, so I want to open Silver Efex, so I'm just going to click on it. It gives me this box, and it will list all of the layers that have a mask. So if I had 3 different layers that had masks, whether I've used them or not, it's still going to show them here. So you can either select them all or not. I haven't done anything on the mask, so I don't really need that one to come in because that's just the default that the adjustment layers add. So we're going to just go ahead and say open. So by being able to open different masks, if you wanted to open a layer with a mask to do an effect on the part of the image that you've already masked, you'll be able to do that in Nik and go back and forth and open different layers to do different Nik effects without having to use control points and things if you've already got a mask made, which is really cool. Let's see, what do we got in here? Oh, so yes, thank you, Pat. So the plugins, it's now under your plugins menu rather than that menu. And then I dock it to the panel because I just find that easier than it's less jumping around with your mouse. Will you uninstall Nik 7? Yes, I will. For now, I'm keeping it because it is so different. And I knew I obviously needed it for this presentation, but I will at some point. I usually keep both for a while when I have anything new. Okay, so you'll notice the difference, the biggest difference when we first come in here is we don't have all those different controls over here. All the basic adjustments and stuff. They've simplified this panel just to make it cleaner. But you can still get to all of those things. They're now listed over here under filters. Just like with color effects, we have lots of filters. So if I want basic adjustments, just click the plus and it will add it right here to the bottom. So we're going to start with that one. So I want to click the plus sign because there are things here that I may want to use. So we'll just click the plus sign. It's now added here. So it's the same panel as before. It's just keeping this panel cleaner for you. And in here, I went with, let's see. Actually, before I do basic adjustments, let's X that one out. I wanted to do film grain, which I don't often do, but they've got some really cool stuff in here. And I go through, that's not the one I want either. Oy. I'm getting ahead of myself. Helps if I read my own notes. I want film types, which are over here already. So that's up here at the top. So there is a list of all different films, and you'll see they accent your image in different ways. And I am going to go with this Fomopan 100 Classic. Okay. So that one, I liked what it did here, and it made my dogwood nice and bright, gave it lots of the detail in here, toned down my background. Okay, and you can see how it's changed the sensitivity of the different colors, so you can further adjust those if you need to. Now I'm going to add my basic adjustments, and I'm going to tweak my brightness adjustments on the highlights. I want to bring that down. Ooh, that was a loud one. That made me jump. That was real close. Oh boy. My cats must be freaking out right now. I'm going to bring the brightness of my highlights down some because I think it's just a little too bright. And then we have under our structure adjustments, I want to also bring down the structure on my highlights. Oops, not on that one. On the, reset that, on the highlights. That was really close, babe. That was loud. Oof. And then on the shadows, I want to bring it all the way down because I don't want to sharpen my shadows. I want to keep those nice and soft, the way my background was. Okay, so now here's where the difference comes in on bringing things back to Photoshop. You can just hit apply, but instead, if you hit this little box to the right of it, I'm down on the lower right of my screen, you have options. Before we had a box here to check if you wanted to come back as a smart object. Now you can do that here. You can bring it back as the active layer. You can bring it back as a new layer, which is what the Nik products typically did. They would make their own layer in Photoshop. So you can still do that, or you can bring it into the active layer. Or we can add a new layer with a mask. So if I had done some masking, this is how you would bring it back. And we're going to do that in the next project. So for now, I'm just going to bring it back as a new layer and then hit apply. So before you hit apply, you want to check there and make sure you're bringing it back the way you want to. So this came over the same way. I just brought it as a new layer. I didn't make it a smart object, which is a good idea to do if you want to, have the option to come back into Nik. It would open it as a smart object, and you could just double click it and go right back in and make further changes. Okay. Let's see. So yes, I see there are questions about the pricing on Nik. It is, you can upgrade. If you have version 6 or 7, you're eligible for an upgrade, which is $89. If you own anything older than 6, then you have to purchase it at the full price, which is $159.99. I do have my affiliate link. I will put it in the box in just a second. Actually, give me 1 second. I'll grab it from my other screen. And I appreciate if you use it. Even if you click this first and then go into your account, and you can still get the upgrade, and I get a few dollars for it. Check my links and give me 1 second. Got too many things open here on my screens. Let's see. Webinars, affiliates. Got to get to the right page. And Nik, and I will copy this and put it in the chat box for you. And it's in the blog too with the announcement of the new product, but if you want to grab that, you can. All right, so we're going to do one other image, and I'm going to show you how some of the masking works. So let's close that one. And like I said, I'm still getting used to this, so bear with me a little bit. All right, so we're going to do this image here. Let's close that panel. And again, I want to add a brightness and contrast layer to this first. And I'm going to, before I make any selections, I want to make a selection because I just want to brighten up this truck a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go to my quick selection and do select subject. And then I'm going to grab what it missed. I don't want the window selected. And I'm doing this kind of quick. I did it with a little more finesse, I guess you could say, when I was practicing on this project. But you want to make sure you get a nice clean selection of your subject. I don't want the shadows. I just want the actual truck color. I don't want the tire. All right, that will do. So now I have a selection made. So now I can click in my mask and I can utilize this selection to make my mask. So I've got my foreground color black. Click on my mask, and I'm going to do on a PC Alt backspace. On a Mac, it would be Option Delete. So I've masked Actually, I want that to be reverse of that, so I'm going to do a Control I because I want to mask everything. Where'd it go? It's going to be one of those days. I know. Tape says, slow down. All right. So, let's see. Antiques. So I did that. Made the truck. Oh, I know why. So instead of doing it that way, let's do that. If I just, now that I have my selection made, if I click on the Add a Layer mask, why is it being difficult? I do this all the time. It should not add another one. It should ask, let's get rid of this layer and try this again. Whee! Brightness and contrast. I haven't done anything yet. There it goes. Now it came up because I had the selection, and that's what I want, is my truck to be selected. So if you make the selection, then add that, we'll be okay. So now I'm going to go in, and I want to just brighten my truck a little bit. Okay, so I'm just bringing this up just a hair. And we can actually utilize this mask in Nick now, which is what I want to do. So now we're going to launch our Nick panel, and I want a combination. I want to apply it in Nick. I want the selected mask. So we're going to click on here, and we're going to select that mask and say open. Okay, so now I'm going to apply a preset. So I'm going to go to my preset. Let's go into all. Close that. Come on. Presets. There we go. Favorites. Number 042. I know it's in here. There we go. I want to use this intensifier one. So again, add some drama to my sky. So now what we can do, I want to utilize that mask to change this truck a little bit. So you're going to come over here, and down under local adjustments where we had all our control points, we are going to select this little square over here with the downward pointing arrow, and that's going to import my mask. So rather than creating a control point, we can be even more precise by utilizing our mask that we created. So I'm going to click on that, and here is that mask that I want to use. Okay. So I'm going to click on that one that I want. It's the only one I have, but I'm going to click that. And now here is that mask. And now, just like with a control point, you get your controls below it. Okay, so these are only going to affect what's in that mask, just as if it were a control point. So I'm going to add some structure. I'm going to amplify the whites. Amplify the blacks, and some fine structure. Okay, so we can, I can show you the before and the after. So that was before, and that's the change I made. You can see it's only affecting the truck because we've utilized that mask that we created. So again, instead of hitting apply, I want to click on here, and I'm going to bring it back as a smart object.
Smart object?
Dave's being funny behind me saying, you're using a smart object? Oh my! I don't use them as often as I should, but I do like them with Nick, because now if I wanted to go back in and change it, all you do is double click on that effect, and it's going to relaunch it and give you everything that you had exactly the way it was. So if I decide, well, maybe I went too bright, or I want it to be brighter, I could bring down the brightness on that truck, or I could bring it up. I could do any other change I want. And again, I'm going to, it's already a smart object, so now I can hit apply, and it will take it right back, so that you can continue to make changes, which is the cool thing about using those. Okay, so let's see. Charles Pearson said some great tips. Pat Rex says remove both masks. Oh, yes, thank you. It is a great improvement over on the interface and the capabilities for utilizing masks. Debbie says, OMG. And smart objects can be your best friend. Yes, I know, and I should use them more often than I do, but old habits are hard to break sometimes. So you can see that, this is how we have it now. We have our mask, and we've utilized it with our solar effects. And if I had a mask on, say, this building, if there were two different layers with two different masks, again, when you open that up, you'd see both of them, and I could now go in and use the mask for something on this building and do that separately than I did to everything else. So it just, lets you be able to use the Nick products in the way that you would do stuff in Photoshop, which is really cool. And I have some notes on the last page here. I am just beginning to play with this, so there are more features to show you. The Silver Efex was one of the biggest updates they've done. Also new in the Nick 8, let's launch it for just a second. We don't need the mask right now. They added the clear view filter in here, and I have to find it because I don't remember where it is. Let's see if it's under filters. Yep, so clear view. And what clear view is, this is from the regular DxO editing programs. And clear view, it's kind of like dehaze, but it will really, it intensifies color. You can see how it like sharpens things. It gets rid of, if you did have like a haze look, but it really is great for like an overall sharpening kind of a filter. It kind of reminds me of, if you've had Topaz Studio, it's kind of like the AI clear was in there. Very similar, but I think this even works even better. And again, you can do it locally if you don't want to affect the whole image. You always have your option of control points. And it also has the color filter tool, which came over from Color Efex, where if you add a filter, it's going to apply, it's going to work with the sensitivity of the color. And I think I've done too many things for it to be working really well. Let's move the strength up. Yeah, it's not affecting much right now because I've done other things probably. Julie said, should we be making our images in Photoshop smart objects as part of our workflow? A lot of people do. Like I said, I haven't all the time. Sometimes I remember to do that. It is a good habit to get into because it does let you go back in to things and change them easily. I tend to work with layers, so I'll use like the different adjustment layers and things where I can go in and change those. But when you're doing other things, Pat Rex says she always does. It is a good habit to get into. Yeah, smart objects are a good thing to do. So we're just going to cancel that. It just never became part of my workflow back when I started with Photoshop, and that's probably why. But it should be. So those are a couple of the other new things in here. They have made updates to some of the other modules as well. Silver Efex kind of got the biggest overhaul in this update. So the question is, should you keep 7, keep working with that, or go with 8? If you like the control of being able to work with masking in the Nick product, then I would definitely get Nick 8. I think DxO has done the best job with this product since they've had it. It's like, I think about 10 years that they've had it now. The Nick company was great originally, who created it, and it was back then you bought individual modules, it wasn't all one program. And then they sold it to Google, who only bought it to get the mailing lists. They did nothing with it. They just let it sit there and it was going to die. And then DxO purchased it and started revamping it right from the get-go. And I think in the 8 versions that we've had now is just keeps getting better and better. And it's one of my favorite things to use. And I especially like for the black and white, and I love color effects too. I use a lot of the filters in there. So what does Viveza do? Viveza is great if you, that's actually a really good point. If you don't want to do like basic editing in Photoshop or Lightroom first, that would be where I would take it. That's where you can do all your, it's really designed to do great color corrections, but you can do like your basic editing in there. So that would be, if you hadn't edited a photo, I would definitely take it into Viveza first. But if you want to work on color more in an image, then that's what that one does. So Debbie says to use more presets as opposed to filters. I usually start with the presets, especially like in Silver Effects. Color Effects is all filters, so they do have presets, but I tend to use the individual filters there. So for most of them, most programs that have presets, I will start with a preset, whether I'm doing, Nik, or I'm doing stuff in like Photomatics for my HDR. I always think they're a good starting point. If these companies spend a lot of time and effort and money to create them, why not take advantage of it and speed up, your workflow, because you can always tweak them to suit your image and your particular look. Helen says she recommends using Smart Object as well. She does her basic edits in Lightroom, then Photoshop as a Smart Object, and if need be, can just open that Smart Object and change or make further adjustments in Adobe Camera Raw, updating what she did in Lightroom. Now, she would not use a Smart Object, so she uses them all the time. Jim says, are there other places to get tutorials? I will put some in the blog tomorrow. Nik had a couple, and I tried to find them when I was putting this together the other day, and I just was running out of time. I'm still trying to get caught up on things since I've been back from workshops. I've only been back since Thursday, so I'm still playing catch up. But there are a couple people who have done some, and I'll post those in the blog tomorrow, so that you can check those out. And don't forget about our conference coming up on June 21st and 22nd. We have a great lineup coming. As always, you can check it out on the website, the blog, the newsletter. It's all over the place. The $49 early bird ends on May 31st, so you have 11 more days to get the best pricing at this point. And then it will go to $59, which is still not a bad price. But if you want to save some money, grab that now. Don't forget. Hope to see you there. And I'm going to jump offline because the thunders are still rumbling out there. Bill says, how do you determine which program you use? That's a good question. I get asked that a lot. Kind of depends what I want to do with the image. So if I know I'm using, going for a black and white, I'll definitely go to Nik. If I'm working with textures, then that I typically do in Photoshop. Sometimes I'll use Smart Photo Editor for that. So it kind of depends what I'm looking to do with an image. I do use Luminar a lot as well. Which is also great for editing if I don't want to do Photoshop, or sometimes I'll use it as a plugin from Photoshop. So it's kind of hard to say. It really depends on what I think I want to do with an image. So there's really not a tried and true, always, kind of an answer. It just kind of depends what I'm looking to do with something. And I like to experiment. So sometimes I'll have an image and it's like, well, I want to, excuse me, I've got the hiccups now. I want to do something with this, but I don't know what I want to do. So I start playing with a couple different things and see what I like. Alrighty, now the rains are coming. So we're about at 5 o'clock. So I thank you as always for being here. I greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget to grab your copy of the notes. They're on sale for another week, I think. And we'll talk to you all soon. Have a good night.